Welcome to Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed the National College Football Championship last night. Congratulations to the Indiana Hoosiers. I feel like I have to congratulate Margaret as well from the University of Sewing, who's been sending me all her Hoosier propaganda. Universityofsewing.com. Thank you, Margaret. At least I had the right tie on last week on Special Report. It was a big win. It was a great football game. It is, I think, beyond dispute now that Big Ten is where college football goes to play real football. And the poor SEC, its era's over. They're fading away like the Whigs. They are the Whigs of college football. And I'll have to talk to Mary Catherine Ham about that when she comes in. But the Big Ten's the place to go, especially if you're a kid undergrad and you want to go to a big university and have big football, Big Ten. I mean, if you want to lead the country, go to Hillsdale. I mean, lead it in the right way. You want to lead the country in the wrong way, you might still want to go to the Ivies because they haven't figured it out. If you want a nice liberal arts education in the sun, you come to Chapman. Can't recommend USC. They are in the Big Ten, but they don't win many football games. Can't recommend UCLA. They're full of anti-Semites. But Chapman's fine. It was a great night last night, and my hat is off to the Mendoza family because they obviously have done everything right. And Mom's got MS, so her husband does not stand up when she can't stand up to cheer for the magic touchdown. I guess that will always be the magic touchdown. You don't follow football. Trust me on this. It was a fabulous game. Miami, you've done good, but you can't compete with the Big Ten. At least not week after week after week after week. It's been, President Trump is speaking right now. He has been speaking for a bit about his anniversary of his return to the Oval Office. He was sworn in a year ago today. My Fox News column is about that. He ought to be known as the Punisher. He punishes people who need to be punished. And in this past year, he has punished Iran. He has punished the Somalia terrorists. He's punished terrorists in Nigeria. He has punished people all across the globe who have acted out of line, like Nicolas Maduro. And he's punished the appropriate people in the United States who should not have come into our country illegally and who are dangerous. And he's going to punish the people who break the Constitution's laws concerning all sorts of things. And he's going to establish a new set of precedents. Here's how President Trump began his press conference, cut number 20.
But here's the book. These are all things we have. I'm going to read a few of the samples, but look at this. These are all, each line is something that we did. Nobody did that before. And it's big stuff, too. Look, we have the hottest country in the world. So, I will read you a few. We ended Biden's stagflation. We were in stagflation. That's a disaster. That's far worse than inflation. As you know, he had the biggest inflation in the history of our country. They say 48 years. Pick your choice. But they had the biggest inflation in the history of our country. We have it right down to a normal number now. We're going to get it even a little bit lower. Created super high. What we've done with growth is incredible. We created super high economic growth, and America is booming. It's booming. There are thousands of businesses right now that are being built. Many of the biggest factories in the world are being built right in our country. They're not going to other countries. They're leaving other countries. Fourth quarter GDP is on track to pass perhaps much more than 5% growth, and that's despite the fact that we had a Democrat shutdown. They shut down our country, and we had 5%. Nobody in this room has ever heard about 5%. I think it could be 20% if we do it right. If we don't, every time we have good numbers, they raise interest rates. You shouldn't do it. In the old days, if you had good numbers, they'd lower interest rates, or they wouldn't do anything. Here they try and kill it. They always try and kill success. Over the last 20, 25 years, that's the way. In the old days, if you had good numbers, the market would go through the roof. Today, if you have good numbers, the market goes down.
Market's not doing well today. In fact, at this hour, Dow is down 1.8%. The S&P 500 is down 2%. And the NASDAQ is down 2.25%. So he's obviously aware that the Dow is having a bit of a bad day, and maybe it's the beginning of the correction that David Bahnsen and others have been saying has to come. I don't know if AI bubble is bursting or not, or if it's just a correction and some profit taking. President continued cut 21.
Gasoline, they have places in the country now, $1.99 a gallon. $1.99, $2.30, $2.50. I guess the average now they're saying is $2.31. I mean, he was at $4.50 and $5 for periods of time. And he went back to the Trump formula, but he didn't do it properly, and he really went back to parts of it because you would have had $8 gasoline if they didn't. But he didn't do it properly. He had people that didn't know what they were doing.
I should have gone to him before this and said, gasoline in California hasn't come down, Mr. President. Please, when you say everywhere except Gavin Newsom's California, gasoline's come down. Because it's still between $4.50 and $5 a gallon out here on the West Coast, where I won't stay much beyond the beginning of Michigan. Let me, however, I got into Minnesota. And since Josh Holmes is coming up, let's play cut number 14.
Wow, that's a big crowd. It's a lot of people. I think it's like a record. So these are accomplishments. We have a lot of accomplishments. And as you know, this is the anniversary, first anniversary, January 20th. And it's been an amazing period of time. We have
to get to the Minnesota stuff. So let's go to cut number 15. This is the Minnesota stuff.
Boy, these are rough characters. These are all criminal, illegal aliens that, in many cases, they're murderers, they're drug lords, drug dealers. They're the mentally insane. There's some of them who are brutal killers. They're mentally insane. They're killers, but they're insane. These are just in Minnesota. California, it's worse. In other states, it's worse. No, Minnesota, the crime is incredible. The financial crimes are incredible. And the problem is because of the agitators and insurrectionists, whatever you want, troublemakers, but they're paid agitators and insurrectionists. Nobody talks about the fact that $19 billion at a minimum is missing in Minnesota, given to a large degree by Somalians. They've taken it. Somalians, can you imagine? And they don't do it. A lot of very low IQ people, they don't do it. Other people work it out, and they get them money, and they go out and buy Mercedes-Benzes, and they come from here, they have no money. They never had money. They never had a life. They never had a government. They never had a country, because there's basically no country. Somalia is not even a country. They don't have anything that resembles a country. And if it is a country, it's considered just about the worst in the world. They come here and they become rich and they don't have a job. I was told that Ilhan Omar is worth $30 million. She never had a job. She's a crooked congressman. So here is another one. And I have, oh, by the way, we just took out, these are all what ICE is doing. And it's a dangerous job. These are rough people. Weapons. This one here is very bad. I'm going through this because I think we have plenty of time. I'm going to beautiful place in Switzerland where we'll be, I'm sure I'm very happily awaited for.
All right, now go down, if you will, to cut number 19 for our last cut of this segment. Again, the president today at the White House.
All top of the line criminals. They're not going to be good. They're not going to be well behaved here. I could do thousands. We had over 3,000 in the last fairly short while. Just in Minnesota. What's the number, Carol? 10,000.
10,000 criminals arrested in Minnesota alone.
10,000 criminals. And these are serious criminals. Now, how can a place with 10,000 criminals, how can you have a state? And yet they're fighting us. I like that guy. Keeps nodding to me. Do you agree with me, I guess? I like him. I don't know who he is, but I like him. He keeps nodding. He says, you're right. He's obviously a little on the right side, maybe.
It's a little bit. We got to play that for Josh Holmes coming up. Josh Holmes is going to join us. Josh is from Minnesota. I think he's from Lake Minnetonka. And my friends up on AM 1280, you took a few punches today from the president because you got a problem. You've got buffoons running your state. You've got people who don't know about the supremacy clause. And you have a chance to change that. You have an open Senate seat. You have a chance to nominate someone like Tom Weiler. There's another Navy vet running as well, but you got a chance to get some serious people running your state. You got to find someone. You know, Hinderrocker, Scott Johnson, Dwight Rabus run for governor of Minnesota. So it's not getting a good day in the Chamber of Commerce for Minnesota is not having a good day today. Joined by Josh Holmes of the Ruthless Podcast. Josh, did you watch that game last night?
Did I ever, Hugh? Did I ever? What a story. You know, one of the most improbable national champions if you look at the history of Indiana football. But what a great story. What a great coach. Just an all-around team.
The Mendoza family, inspiring. Americans like to be inspired. I believe that at the bottom of my soul. And that it's an inspiring story that dad sits with mom because she can't stand up because she has MS, and the kid comes out of nowhere. And he's like too good to be true, isn't he, Josh?
Oh, totally. Well, not only that, but that 4th and 5 play where he ends up breaking a tackle and taking it into the end zone, we're going to be watching that 25 years from now. That's like goes down in the lore of college football with like Vince Young running and all kinds of different things that like just live on forever.
Now, a lot of people are happy about this. There are two people who are happiest that they won. I suggest to you it is the offensive tackle who twitched and got a second one to a 2nd and 6. And that the second one is the guy who roughed the passer in the last. Those two Hoosiers are the most relieved Hoosiers in the universe.
No kidding. Can you imagine Coach Signetti on that situation if it went the wrong way? Yeah, there would be some lonely barns in Indiana. I know that. But
well, you know how you and your fellas interact. The Hoosiers will get together every 5-10 years, and those two guys are going to hear about it for the rest of their lives. Right? You almost cost us the natty. Now, Josh, I got some hard questions for you. First of all, when does Minnesota go find whoever's left in James Madison? I don't even know which conference James Madison is in. Do you?
Wait, is this a college football attack or a Minnesota attack? I mean, it's a tough
time
to be from the land. Yeah, it's a tough time. Tough time to be from the land of down to 10,000 lakes. It's almost as difficult as to defending the Cleveland Browns. But, you know, we're getting a flavor for these.
We're used to it. Every year is a promise. But this is going to turn into an all points bulletin on things Minnesota, because that's what the president turned his presser into. Were you watching it?
Yes, he did. I did. I did see that. And you know what? Look, I'm glad he is. This is a state that I love dearly. I'm from there, and it's unrecognizable what's happening downtown. This is what poor political leadership provides for you. I mean, nobody I know, nobody I grew up with, nobody that I've interacted, and I keep pretty close with a whole bunch of people back there, have any idea what any of this is about, right? I mean, you've got paid agitators, you got a whole bunch of people where the very premise of the uprising against ICE downtown is that apparently they're okay with $8 billion being stolen out of their back pocket. And they want a whole bunch of people who are actually convicted criminals, as well as illegals, to continue living in the city. It's insane.
For the benefit of my AM 1280, the Patriot audience, and my audience in Duluth, and for all Minnesotans everywhere, let's replay Cut 19 for Josh Holmes of the Ruthless Podcast.
All top of the line criminals. They're not going to be good. They're not going to be well behaved here. I could do thousands. We had over 3,000 in the last fairly short while. Just in Minnesota. What's the number, Carol?
10,000.
10,000.
10,000 criminals arrested in Minnesota alone.
10,000 criminals. And these are serious.
10,000 criminals arrested in
yeah.
Minnesota. Caroline Levitt for the win from the side, from the Ashbrook chair, the honorary Ashbrook chair. She comes in and puts the knife in your heart, Josh. I mean, 10,000 criminals. That's a lot.
I know it. Well, it's a lot, but look, I would wager to guess that every sanctuary city, every sanctuary state is going to have extremely similar numbers. If I've been critical of the Trump administration in one regard, it's that I wish they would spend more time on each topic as it's going through the public consciousness. This president's pace of play is legendary. He's on to the next, he's on to the next, and you never get the full litigation of what it is that we're doing here. But when he spends time at a press conference going through the pictures, as you saw today, he's putting a fine point on what it is that ICE is doing there in the first place. And I think that that's just necessary because at some point, there's a bunch of middle-of-the-road voters out there who are looking around. They don't like particularly conflict, and they're not, they don't know who to blame for what's going on. But then you see the argument laid out before you. Is that cool? Are we cool with these people continuing to live in your communities? Of course you're not. That's what you have a government for, what you hope people take care of, and I'm glad the president is highlighting it.
Now, Josh, I've been going to Minnesota since you were in high school. I've been going for 26 years, right?
Yeah.
And I used to walk around St. Paul, and they built the ice castle one year. I went and did a show there, and I would do Hugh on Ice, and I'd walk around downtown Minneapolis, go to Symphony Hall. What has happened? It was a normal state. It was actually Minnesota nice. So what happened?
Well, I still think 90% of it is, Hugh, but you've got this downtown culture. You've got a city council that's basically lawless, and it's tribal. And I mean that in the very definition of the way. I mean, this is you've got a Somali codlock on a huge port of the governance of Minneapolis, and you have a governor and a mayor of Minneapolis that are entirely beholden to the furthest reaches of the left wing, not to mention the attorney general, who is not enforcing laws against anybody who doesn't vote for him. And I mean, this is the price that you pay for having one-party domination that has slid off the map in terms of having any responsibility whatsoever. And unfortunately, the whole world has got to see what it is that they've been up to at this point. It's embarrassing. As a Minnesotan, it's embarrassing.
Now, I got also, is it going to slide over to the Vikings and the Gophers? Because even if Minnesota digs up some of that billionaire money to do their NIL stuff, and the Vikings get under the cap, who's going to want to live there after the president spends an hour and a half ragging on the Gopher State?
I mean, there's no amount of pain that can happen in a political sphere that I haven't been already inflicted by the Minnesota Vikings during the course of my fanship. It is, whether it's wide left or an interception in the fourth quarter. I mean, I have seen it all on that front. The Gophers, look, it is what it is. They're trying to compete.
You weren't even alive
Indiana,
for
maybe
Ahmad Rashad, were you? Were you alive for Ahmad Rashad breaking my heart? No, you weren't, were you? You weren't even alive.
No, I'm in the years of Randy Moss and Chris Carter and Dante Culpepper and all that, but it all ended the same, and it continues to end the same. I'm just hoping
Josh,
at some
exit
point.
Exit question. We got 2 minutes. President Trump has finished year one. Do you expect year two to be better or worse? Because there's a midterm in here, and we know in the midterm for Dwight Eisenhower, Republicans lost 49 seats. In the midterm for Nixon Ford, they lost 48. In the midterm for Reagan, they only lost 5. And in the midterm for W, they lost 30 in the House. The Senate changed hands 3 out of those 4 times. What do you expect?
Yeah, I think you got to quantify what's better and what's worse. Clearly, from a legislative capacity, year one is as good as you're ever going to do. And I think the majorities in the House dictate that it's probably not quite as ambitious of an agenda. In terms of the politics, they're really going to have to focus on the economy, and they're really going to have to pull people along. All of the headwinds, the historical headwinds and everything else are blowing against them at this point. But they have a story to tell, and Democrats keep providing all of the fodder. If you just stop and take inventory every once in a while, this is the alternative. And you see it playing out in Minnesota. You see it playing out all what they want to do to this country. Virginia, a perfect example, a new governor there, and the things that they want to do. You got to highlight that stuff because the alternative is not irrelevant when you're talking about an election.
Absolutely. I tried to explain that to a TDSer yesterday. Josh Holmes of the Ruthless Podcast. I hope your fellow colleagues on the Miles Podcast spend a lot of time on the president's focus on your home state. Because
I'm dying out here.
You are. You're out there alone on an igloo. Because on an iceberg. Because that's where the igloo you chose to come from is. We love Minnesota. We just want to see it return to the icy roots from which it came. Stay nowhere, American, except on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Thank you, Josh Holmes. It is time to tell you about AndrewandTodd.com, great sponsor of the program. They're with Union Home Mortgage. They are a bank. They lend you money if you're buying a house or if you're refinancing the house that you already own. And they also will lend you if you want to buy a rental property or if you want to buy a second home and a retreat. I'm looking at the 10-year Treasury today, which is up to 4.28%. Now, that's not the rate you'll get. It's gone up in the last few days. So your 30-year mortgage is going to be in the 6s, almost certainly. But you may have to buy a house and you may be done waiting for the interest rates to come down. Jerome Powell is not going to bring them down. I don't know whether the president is right that they are doing it out of spite for him, but the Fed's not going to move until there's a new Fed chairman, I think. And so if you want to move in the next 6 months, you want to go out and buy your house right now, you want to work with AndrewandTodd.com. 888-888-1172 connects you to andrewandtodd.com. Andrew Del Rey, been my friend for 25 years. Todd Avakian for half that time. They did my mortgage when I moved back to the Beltway from California. They've done Dwayne's mortgage. They've done mortgages for many members of my family. They've done mortgages for many people in Salem. And they lend money because they're in the business of making money, but they get repeat business because they're so good at it, and they are very helpful, and they never upsell you. They don't put you into too much house. If you're a veteran, you don't want to put any money down, they will serve you. If you're a first-time home buyer and you're completely dizzied by the process, they will walk you through it. If you are a senior citizen, you want to get a reverse mortgage, they do that. That's a little bit tricky, and you want to do it with someone that you can trust, like Andrew Del Rey and Todd Avakian. I always tell people, Andrew and I have been in a Bible study together for more than 20 years, and that's because he's just a good man, as is Todd Avakian. Good Christian guys, and you can trust them, and they work across the United States. 888-888-1172. Second sponsor I want to tell you about in this segment, before I bring in the next segment, David Drucker to talk the politics of the first year of Donald Trump, is Consumer Cellular. Because I do try and save people money. If you're going to buy a house, you're going to save money with andrewandtodd.com. But there's no reason to waste money on your cell phone service. You can have great service and great savings with Consumer Cellular. Go to consumercellular.com/Hugh or call 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. Takes about 20 minutes to switch, and you'll save money. And I know you'll save money if you'll just get your phone bill out before you call them, so that when you get the American-based service center on the line, which takes one button, you press one button, and then you're talking to a real live person in the United States of America at Consumer Cellular, and you can say, I've got my cell service with X, Y, or Z, and I'm paying this much for this. And they'll ask you a couple questions about the data plan that you're on, and it will be there on your bill. And you're going to learn you're paying way too much for your cell phone service. Why throw that money away? All cell phone service pretty much the same, and Consumer Cellular the equal of any, but they all cost the same. Big Cellular trapped a lot of people in by buying a phone. They thought they were getting a free phone. The phone was baked into the cost of the plan, wasn't free. Or they think that they need the much data as they're getting. Look, if you need unlimited data and you're over 50, you want to go to Consumer Cellular. You can have 2 lines of unlimited data, same number, same data, all that stuff, for $60 a month. You and your partner, you and your spouse, 2 lines, $60 a month if you're 50 years and older. No matter who you are, call Consumer Cellular, 1-800-411-4454. I did not go up the implacable hill today, but I'm still going to tell you about Relief Factor because I'll go up tomorrow. This morning I had lunch with Matt Parlow, the president of Chapman University, my boss in the academic world. And Matt is a fabulous university president. Chapman is a fabulous college for people out in California. And folks who are on the film schools know it's one of 3. You go to Chapman, you go to USC, you go to UCLA, but it's a great place to go to college anyway. But I did not go up the implacable hill. I had eggs and toast, which is not what I normally do. So the implacable hill tomorrow will be a little bit tougher. But I got my eye-carrying curcumin resveratrol omega right here, and I take it, if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, every day, because it's easy to take and it's productive for your body. It helps your body's anti-inflammatory system, keeps you going to the gym, keeps you going up whatever is your implacable hill. And the hill doesn't get flatter. I just keep going up. It's a good climb. I had my son-in-law do it this past weekend. He said, that's a good effort. I said, yes, it is. Been doing it for 30 years. Love that hill. Love that hill. But it's implacable. And that's why you need Relief Factor. And if you've not been exercising and you think, well, how am I ever going to run 11 and a half miles? You don't have to. You just need to get out and move every day, or go to the gym every day, or go to the pool every day, or lift in your garage some hand weights every day. You just have to move. And if you get minor aches and pains from exercise, and they do come, or from aging, and they will come, you want Relief Factor in your life. ReliefFactor.com, 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Get the starter pack, $19.95. That's less than $1 a day for a 3-week starter pack. Or go to ReliefFactor.com. ReliefFactor.com. The starter pack is available there. That music means David Drucker is in the house. He is with The Dispatch, senior political writer for The Dispatch. He's also a regular visitor here to the Hugh Hewitt Show for many, many years. David, I've been covering politics on air since 1990, and a lot of anniversaries have come and gone and that. But this is the first anniversary of Donald Trump's return to power, and it's unique. How do you rate his first year back?
Well, I mean, I think we have to look at, where he is with voters. I mean, that's my general lane, if you will. And look, I think if you look at the polling, Republican voters are happy. A lot of them believe that they're getting what they voted for, and they're excited for more. And obviously, Democrats have the opposite view. And independents, it's a mixed bag, although his numbers with independents are down right now. What I would say is, I'd say something a little bit maybe different to add to the conversation here, which is, when I was interviewing voters during the 2024 campaign, there were some voters that listened intently to what President Trump had to say at his campaign rallies and said, yes, please give me that. And there were others that said, well, I don't want all of that. I only want some of that. And I bet you I'm not going to get all of that. I'm only going to get the sum that I want. And I think, one thing that's been borne out over the past year is that the things he talked about doing, he's by and large either done or tried to do. And so in that regard, he's not just sort of unique, but it's an interesting dilemma for a certain percentage of Republicans, not a large percentage, but a not necessarily insignificant percentage.
I want to play for you a cut of his just concluded press conference, David. Cut 19, cue it up if you would, Harley and Adam, because in this cut, he talks about Minnesota, and the voice you hear, of course, is Carolyn Levitt, his press secretary. Cut 19.
The line, criminals. They're not going to be good. They're not going to be well behaved here. I could do thousands. We had over 3,000 in the last fairly short while. Just in Minnesota. What's the number, Carol? 10,000.
10,000 criminals arrested in Minnesota alone.
10,000 criminals. And these are serious criminals. Now, how can a place...
So, David Drucker, 10,000 criminals arrested in Minnesota alone is a pretty big number. Are you startled by that?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'm startled by it or not. We'll have to see if the numbers bear out, but let's say that they bear out. There's a lot of support for the president's efforts to deport illegal immigrant criminals. The problem he's having politically is that citizens are getting caught up in that. I know this president spoke to that somewhat during the news conference. And the videos, I think if everybody believed or knew that they were segregated to illegal immigrant criminals, wouldn't be that concerned. But there are a lot of other people getting caught up in this. And so that makes it just, again, a politically mixed bag for him.
Do you think it makes it a politically... I like to review for everyone the numbers. In 1958, the second midterm for Dwight Eisenhower, he lost 49 seats in the House. Under Nixon Ford, the second midterm in 1974, they lost 48 seats in the House. Ronald Reagan in 1986 only lost 5 seats in the House. George W. Bush in 2006 lost 30 seats in the House. So the low is 5 and the high is 48. They don't win. You don't win the second midterm. David, do you?
Not usually, no. Now, Bill Clinton did have a good second midterm. Voters determined that the impeachment led by Speaker Gingrich was overreach. That's just what we know because of what happened. And so, look, when you're in control of the White House, you're always on defense in a midterm election. That's just the way it is. It doesn't make Donald Trump unique. It doesn't make his policies uniquely rejected or anything of that magnitude. And, of course, they haven't happened yet, so we'll have to see what happens. I just was, in discussions about his immigration policies, that's where he has always been the strongest. And I think that's where he has the most room to be durably approved of, if you will. All right. And so the surprise for a lot of voters is that more than just criminals are being caught up in these efforts, and people don't like that. And they don't like the idea of having to show their papers. And so on the one hand, potentially a lot of illegal immigrant criminals arrested. That's a good thing. That should happen. And that will continue to happen. But how these things are done matters a lot to the American people. It's why we've always been so big on our constitutional rights. You can't just arrest a bad guy. You got to have a warrant, et cetera. I mean, Hugh, you're a lawyer. You know this better than me. But I mean, it matters to people in terms of how they look at this stuff.
Now, what also matters to them is affordability of buying a house, affordability at the gas station, affordability in the grocery store. He's done well, but he hasn't done well enough, I don't think, to make people believe it's appreciably different. But he got time. This doesn't lock in until June. I think he's going to stay laser focused on the economy. But things like Iran keep coming up, and I want to finish there. They murdered 15,000 of their people. On a proportionate basis, that's bigger than Tiananmen Square. It's bigger than 10/7 in Israel, bigger than 9/11 in the United States. Should he punish Iran? Will he?
Well, I definitely wouldn't rule it out. The president said he would do something if people died, if people were murdered by the regime. And so there's some level of credibility issues there. But he's got time, and let's see what he does. And I would just say the challenge for him when it comes to affordability is to get himself to a place where that's all he talks about. And that's very hard for him to do. He likes to talk about a million things all the time. When it works for him, it really works. In this situation, it's the kind of thing that doesn't. What he does on Iran, though, will be interesting to watch.
When you look at the Senate, John Husted is a target in Ohio. He's a pretty good candidate. Susan Collins is a target in Maine. She's a wonderful candidate. Tough race in North Carolina between Roy Cooper, a formerly popular governor, and Mike Whatley. Then you go out to Minnesota, Texas, Alaska, Georgia, where John Ossoff. What's your spidey sense on the United States Senate?
Well, look, I think if the election were today, I think Republicans would retain control of the Senate, even if they lost a couple of seats. But this thing is still a moving target. And of course, in 2022, I thought Republicans would flip control of the Senate, and I was wrong. So I'm trying to be very cautious here. We need to see how some of these primaries play out. I wouldn't sleep on Alaska, and I wouldn't sleep on what goes on in the Texas primaries in terms of very least how resources are going to need to be directed on the Republican side.
I agree with that. If they nominate John Cornyn, it's a layup. That's why I'm for John Cornyn. And Dan Sullivan is about as good a senator as anyone could hope for the state of Alaska, but they do have that unusual voting system, ranked choice. So we got to have Dan Sullivan back to talk about that. David M. Drucker on X. Follow him from the Dispatch. Thank you, David. Brett Baer is coming up after the break. Look forward to that. I'll talk to him about this. President Trump was asked whether or not the military option is still on the table vis-a-vis Iran. I hope it is. Here's what he said moments ago. Cut number 27.
President,
Yes.
I want to ask you about Iran. Is the military option still on the table? And can you assure us that the killing in Iran has stopped? And when regard to the Peace Council, which members have to pay $1
So with
billion?
Iran, are you from Iran?
No, I cover the White House.
Where are you from?
I'm Palestinian American.
So with Iran, they were going to hang 837 people, and I let them be known that, and we let them know that if that happens, that will be a very bad day for them. And they decided not to do it. They didn't hang the people. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the future, but supposedly they've taken that off the table. But they were going to, last week, they were going to hang on Thursday or Wednesday. They were going to hang, I think, 837 people, and they didn't hang anybody. So we're just going to have to see what happens with Iran. Is the military option off the table?
I wish the press would let him finish the sentence. There's a military option on the table. Then he was asked about top 3 accomplishments. Cut number 28.
We heard a long list of accomplishments from the last year. Could you cherry pick the top 3? And then looking forward, what are your 3 most important priorities in 2026?
So I think the building of a really powerful military has been a great achievement, and that would include the Venezuela thing. That would include the attack on Iran and the wiping out of the nuclear threat. I think that's been really amazing what we've done militarily. I think what we've done in business has been incredible. We have $18 trillion coming in. Plants are being built all over. Thousands of plants are being built all over the country. $18 trillion is a record. No country has ever come anywhere even close to that. I think that's a record. And I think that most favored nations for drugs is something that nobody thought they'd be able to get. Tariffs helped me there because the nations would have never gone along with it if I wasn't able to say, if you don't go along with it, we're going to put a 10 or 15 or 20% tariff on your nation. And they went along. And our drug prices are going to come down at numbers never even seen before, never even thought possible before. So those would be 3 things.
And then one more cut number 29.
How far are you willing to go to acquire Greenland?
You'll find out.
Actually, he spoke about Greenland a little bit more. Cut 26.
If a consequence of your determination to take control of Greenland is the ultimate breakup of the NATO alliance. Is that a price you're willing to pay?
You mean the breakup of it's very interesting.
The NATO alliance.
So I think something's going to happen that's going to be very good for everybody. Nobody's done more for NATO than I have, as I said before, in every way. Getting them to go up to 5% of GDP was something that nobody thought was possible, and pay. At 2%, they weren't paying. At 5%, they are paying. And they're buying a lot of things from us, and they're giving them, I guess, to Ukraine. That's up to them, but they're giving them to whoever they're giving them to, but they're buying a lot. I think that we will work something out where NATO is going to be very happy and where we're going to be very happy. But we need it
So that's
for
not
security.
a definitive statement.
All top-of-the-line criminals. They're not going to be good. They're not going to be well-behaved here. I could do thousands. We had over 3,000 in the last fairly short while. Just in Minnesota. What's the number there? 10,000.
10,000 criminals arrested in Minnesota alone.
10,000 criminals. And these are serious criminals. Now, how can a place with 10,000 criminals, how can you have a state? And yet they're fighting us. I like that guy. Keeps nodding to me. Do you agree with
Evening
me?
glory and evening grace, America. That's President Trump with an epic press conference to mark his first anniversary back in the Oval Office. I got to tell you, I have seen a lot of press conferences in my time, and I generally don't know how to assess them when they're this long. The best thing to do is just play them. Cut number 24, President Trump.
The country is proud for the attack on Venezuela, the attack on the Iran nuclear capability, wiped it out. I mean, first administration, Soleimani, the father of the roadside bomb, al-Baghdadi, the father of ISIS, who was rebuilding ISIS. We wiped them out.
What happens to the tariff threat to Greenland if the Supreme Court comes out and rules against you on the tariffs? And
Well, I'll have to use something else. I mean,
are
look,
you willing to use force?
you know, take a look at the word license. Take a look at other things. I mean, we have other alternatives. But the
Can I stop there? I don't think it's necessary that people bring up force. There are lots of things to do vis-a-vis Greenland if the president wants to open up. The United States is the most powerful nation in history. It has a lot of opportunity. It needs blunt force only with people like Iran, only if China invades Taiwan, only to repel people at the borders. It needs blunt force with illegal alien criminals. It needs to use force that way. But there is so much short of that. And the great Robert Jackson explained in the steel seizure cases, there are zones of authority for the president in which his authority is clear, where it's debatable, and where it's circumscribed, 3 zones. And he's got a lot of authority in zone number 1. So we don't have to go to war over Greenland. I want to pay now cut number 23 about unemployment.
So we have, you know, we announce our unemployment numbers, call it unemployment or employment. And they were very good, but we could make them great. But we've slashed tremendous numbers of people off the federal payroll. Because ultimately, if you're on the federal payroll, I mean, we have jobs where they had 10 people for every job. So we cut. Now, if you want to see some good numbers, I'll hire 1 million people. We cut millions of people off the federal payroll. I don't like doing that, but the good news, I don't feel badly because they're getting private sector jobs. And they're getting sometimes twice as much money, 3 times as much money. They're getting factory jobs. They're getting much better jobs and much higher pay. But all I have to do is say, like, you know, what the Democrats do all the time. They hire 1 million people, and then they hire another million. They load it up, and it says, oh, they only have a 3% unemployment rate. It's a fake rate. So with us, we're proud of the fact that we cut so many because, again, I don't want to cut people. But when you cut them and they go out and get a better job, I like to cut them.
That is, in fact, a lot of why the payroll numbers aren't as healthy as they were. The Department of Government Jobs is closed. And that's not always convenient for people. In fact, I talked to a young man this week who came out of Pitt and had a job waiting for him at the FDIC until it wasn't. because the hiring freeze, that's very inconvenient for someone who is planning to join the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and there's a hiring freeze. It's very inconvenient. It's very disruptive. But the federal government is also vast and far too big. And the consolidation that has to occur has got to occur, and Donald Trump is doing it. I have a column today over at Fox News, and I posted a link to it at my X account, Hugh Hewitt. Follow me on X. Please like and subscribe over at YouTube to the Hugh Hewitt channel, which is now at 101,000 viewers, and I appreciate that. That ups our score, and eventually we'll get the plaque that we can spike. But you don't miss anything of major import, especially the interviews or what I put up at my YouTube channel. But I do have a column over at Fox, Hugh Hewitt, Fox News, and just Google that and you'll get all of my columns. It begins this way. The first year of the second term of President Trump concludes today. Only extreme partisans will deny that 45-47 hung a lot of wins on the wall this past year. The closed border, the 8.25 peace negotiations, the one big beautiful bill, Operations Midnight Hammer and Absolute Resolve, and a wonderful combination of falling inflation and rising wages, and of course, rising domestic oil and gas production and the march towards small nuclear reactors. President Trump, Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum, and Secretary of Energy Chris Wright don't often get the headlines for our energy breakout, but AI in our country's national security depends on continuing and expanding it. Most important to the world of his achievements in his first year back, President Trump is not only the commander-in-chief of the mightiest military in history, he knows how to use it. Trump restored America's deterrence that had been forfeited by our collapse in Afghanistan by becoming, quote, the Punisher. Iran, Islamist terrorists across Africa from Somalia to Nigeria, and Nicolas Maduro have all suffered devastating blows that punish them for behavior outside the guardrails of civilized world. Now, will he hit Iran? It's still on the likely receiving end of another massive but rapid, devastating hit that could leave Karg Island and all other oil export facilities in Iran in ruins, and the Ayatollahs and the IRGC bereft of any means to finance their massive murdering spree. That's the quick version of Donald Trump. But then I went on in the Fox News column to note about Vice President Vance. It turns out that today also marks Vice President J.D. Vance's first year as the only other official elected by the entire country. Spare a moment and zoom in on the 41-year-old former senator from Ohio, investment banker, Yale-trained lawyer, and Marine. The vice president has been the ideal number 2 in year 1. He supports his boss, messages for him, provides his best advice, and is willing to go where dutiful vice presidents have always gone, Europe and anywhere else the president sends him. But Vance also emerged in the first year of the second term of President Trump as the John Wick of the Sunday shows and Euro Gabfest. Vice President Vance's communication skills have been widely known since the evisceration of Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota in the 2024 vice presidential debates. I go on and note that Vice President Vance has done more than 100 appearances, more than 50 sit-down interviews in his first year. He has had as good a year as a vice president can have. Now, the vice president is a number 2. He can't go on forever, but the vice president has proven himself to be, in the college jargon of football, a 5-star prospect. The vice president must find it odd, however, to see how many people are putting pen to paper or opining on cable who claim to know what he is thinking on topics he hadn't addressed, and his positions on topics and controversies on which he has never even commented. He's very much the opposite of mysterious, I argue. And if you want to read the whole column, head over to Fox News, their opinion page. You'll find it there. Hundreds of you have been commenting on it because it's unequivocally been a great year for Donald Trump and a very good year for J.D. Vance and a very good year for John Thune and the GOP in the Senate and an amazing year for House Speaker Mike Johnson, which brings me to Speaker Johnson, who addressed the British Parliament today. All right, it's hard to believe, but he did. Here's how he opened cut number 4.
At Downing Street yesterday, I told him that I thought his national address a few hours earlier was well done. He noted, of course, that the UK and the US are close allies and that our strong, constructive partnership all these years has been built on mutual respect and focused on results. I thought that was exactly the right message and the right tone. And because of that, we've always been able to work through our differences calmly as friends. We will continue to do that. I want to assure you this morning that that is still the case. I spoke to President Trump at length yesterday, and I told him that I really felt that my mission here, even though we planned this back in the fall, we didn't know how the events would develop over the last few days. But I told the President that I felt that my mission here today was to encourage our friends and help to calm the waters, so to speak, and I hope to do so.
Okay, I'm going to play for you more of Speaker Johnson. I think it's a historic address to the British Parliament. I don't know that another Speaker of the House has ever done this, but the House of Commons is the People's House, and Speaker Johnson is the leader of the People's House in the United States. So in our 250th anniversary year of independence, it's a pretty interesting event. Joined by Brett Baer, the host of Special Report, America's Anchorman. Brett, we had the most unusual of press conferences today. What did you make of that?
Well, it was the president laying out what he sees as accomplishments of 1 year. It was almost exactly 1 year to the minute that he got inaugurated into his second term as president. I think he spent a lot of time on Minnesota and justifying what he sees as communication not focusing on the number of people, criminals, taken off the streets in these ICE operations and flipping through that at the beginning of the news conference. Obviously, a lot of questions about Greenland, and the one that gets most attention is, what lengths will you go to get Greenland? And he said, you'll find out, this ominous thing. And I think it all leads up to, his Davos speech this week and meeting with those leaders. If I had to guess, it's all a matter of negotiations and deal-making, and he's got a plan to deal with Greenland. I still, to this day, do not believe the U.S. military is going to be engaged in taking over Greenland.
I agree with you on that. I want to play for you the question and answer on Iran, though, because it didn't come up until very late in the press conference. I did the awful metrics of murdering 15,000 people. As a percentage proportion of your population, it's worse than Tiananmen Square. It's worse than 10/7. It's worse than 9/11. So here's President Trump, Brett, getting a question on that, cut 27.
President, I want to ask you about Iran. Is the military option still on the table? And can you assure us that the killing in Iran has stopped? And when regard to the Peace Council, which members have to pay $1 billion?
So with Iran, are you from Iran?
No, I cover the White House.
Where are you from?
I'm Palestinian American.
So with Iran, they were going to hang 837 people. And I let them be known that, and we let them know that if that happens, that will be a very bad day for them. And they decided not to do it. They didn't hang the people. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the future, but supposedly they've taken that off the table. But they were going to, last week, they were going to hang on Thursday or Wednesday. They were going to hang, I think, 837 people. And they didn't hang anybody. So we're just going to have to see what happens with Iran. Is the military option off the table?
So, Brett, they interrupted him when the press corps usually does, when he said, there's a military option on the table, and then the shouting started. What do you think? Is the military option still on the table?
I do think the military option is still on the table, and I do think that that they are monitoring the situation, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's more action, depending on what the regime's response is. I mean, we are moving an aircraft carrier battleship group right there, and I think that it's very possible that it's still there, depending on what the regime does.
Likelier that he does it when he's at Davos, or unlikelier that he does it when he's at Davos, if he's going to deliver a harder hit than they've ever been hit before?
You don't know with Donald Trump. You really don't. The president likes the dramatic, and maybe there would be a chance that would happen. I mean, it would be a very Godfather-esque move mid-speech at Davos to then move on Iran. I don't think so, but you never know.
Now, Brett, today the market's had a very bad day. The Dow is down 1 3/4 points, the S&P down 2%, and the Nasdaq down 2.39%. What do you think that's in reaction to? You and I don't do market forecasting, but I do follow the news and markets. What's that tell you?
Well, I think that the reaction to the Greenland tariff threat and what, the reaction from France and from the EU Commission and, saying let's send a financial bazooka the way of the U.S. I mean, it hasn't happened yet, but at least the talk is that, and it jitters things. I think that the possibility of negotiation here is still very high.
Now, Scott Bessent was making the rounds today about Greenland. And Scott Bessent, who is a superb guy who I don't know anything about, had this to say, cut number one on Fox Business this morning from Davos.
Things are moving in a very positive way here. On the 500% tariffs on the buyers of Russian oil, that is a proposal that Senator Graham has in front of the Senate, and we will see whether that passes. We don't believe that President Trump needs that authority, that he can do it under IEEPA, but that the Senate wants to give him that authority. And just to be clear, that we have Europe buying Russian oil still 4 years later. They are financing the war against themselves. India started buying Russian oil after the conflict began, but President Trump put a 25% tariff on them, and India has geared down and has stopped buying Russian oil.
So Brett Baer, he's talking to Maria Bartiromo here, and this is blunt talk to Europe. You're financing the Russian war machine. I don't know that I've seen anyone be that blunt. Have you?
No. And I think that's some of the messaging that's going to come out from this Davos speech, much like the speech at the United Nations, which was blunt about the UN and its ineffectiveness. I think you're going to get a very blunt speech from President Trump about putting the squeeze on Russia. I don't know if it's going to be J.D. Vance in Germany, but it's going to be pretty significant. And I think that, in the past, that has led to Europe saying, okay, let's do a deal. Let's make something happen. They're not in a great position as far as negotiating on a number of different fronts, and that has moved the needle before.
Absolutely not. Last question about the vice president's first year in office, the inauguration of his being sworn in. I wrote for Fox News this morning. He's done 100 appearances, and he's given 50 interviews. He's not mysterious at all. I think he's done a good job as far as a vice president can do a good job. How do you assess J.D. Vance's first year as the only other nationally elected official?
Well, I think he's definitely, backed up the president in a number of different ways. I think that there's, the political wins. We're going to have to see it's all, shaping up for 2028. They had the second lady today saying that they're very excited that Usha is pregnant with their fourth child. So that's a big announcement heading into year two. And listen, he's well positioned, but there are cross currents here on a number of different fronts, and it depends on, ultimately how President Trump looks at 2028.
I agree with that. Always good to talk to you, Brett. Thanks for calling in during a very busy news day. Special Report starts when the Hugh Hewitt Show ends at 6 p.m. on Eastern Time. Don't miss it tonight, because when there's a lot of news, you want to watch Brett kind of slice and dice it for you with reports from around the country as to how it's going down. And this is a big day. Speaker Mike Johnson addressed the United Kingdom Parliament today in London. Cut number 5 of the Speaker's remarks.
And in that process, I am confident that we can and will maintain and strengthen our special relationship between these two nations, send a message of unity and resolve to our allies around the world, and remind our adversaries and the terrorists and tyrants everywhere that our nations that are dedicated to freedom and justice and order and human dignity are stronger and more resolved now than ever before.
Let's move to cut number 7 of the Speaker's speech.
Across the pond, Congress and the Trump administration have been working very hard. We're trying to usher in a new golden age for our country, as we say. We're marshaling every resource we have to make America safer and stronger and more prosperous than ever before. And I'm very bullish on the prospects of doing that. We must do this because we know those hostile to the West and to our shared values are engaging in increasingly sophisticated forms of subversion and espionage. We see China, Russia, and Iran grow more aggressive and emboldened as they intensify their efforts to exert economic, political, and military influence around the world. We see a callous disregard for basic human rights, new provocations, and even the theft of intellectual property on a scale like we have never seen before. Clearly, President Trump is taking seriously the modern and dynamic threats that China and Russia pose to our global security, especially in focus the last few days as it relates to the Arctic. And while we can have thoughtful debate among our friends about how best to counter these threats, we all certainly agree they must be countered. We ignore these threats.
Then one more cut from the Speaker's address, cut number 8.
It is an objective and obvious truth that a strong America is good for the entire world, and a strong UK is as well. At the same time, it's also obvious that we have to take care of our own houses, so to speak, before we take care of the neighborhood. And let's be honest, among friends here, in both of our nations, there is a need today to fortify our houses against internal challenges as well. In the West, if we make an honest assessment, we must acknowledge that our long-term prosperity and security are currently being undermined by, let's call it a crisis of self-doubt. It's been developing now for years. Elite institutions today tell the young and impressionable that our story is one of oppression and hypocrisy and failure. Our brightest minds are too often taught to view our history only through the lens of its sins. And we see the
He's
world.
right about that. I want to back that, bookend it with President Trump talking about Don Lemon's illegal stunt this weekend, cut number 17.
These are tough people. So this is what the people are trying to protect, because all ICE wants to do is get them out of our country, bring them to prisons and jails and mental institutions from where they came. That's all they want to do. They're patriots, and they have to be abused by guys like Don Lemon, who's a loser, lightweight. I saw him the way he walked in that church. It was terrible. I have such respect for that pastor. He was so calm. He was so nice. He was just accosted. What they did in that church was horrible yesterday. Look at it here. 24 convictions.
Did in that church violated the FACE Act as well. Cut number 18.
They want to take them out of our country. And we're met with paid agitators and insurrectionists, troublemakers. They're paid. You know, when the woman was shot, and I felt terribly about that. And I understand both sides of it. But when she was shot, there was another woman that was screaming shame, 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 right? You saw it. So loud. Like a professional opera singer. She was so loud and so professional. She wasn't a woman that was hurt, like, oh, my heart's injured. She was a professional. She's shame, shame. She's screaming shame, shame. I said, that's not a normal person. That's a professional. These are professional agitators and professional people that want to see our country do badly. But that's not happening because we have the hottest country anywhere in the world, despite this stuff.
Roll on to cut 19, would you?
All top of the line criminals. They're not going to be good. They're not going to be well behaved here. I could do thousands. We had over 3,000 in the last fairly short while. Just in Minnesota. What's the number, Carol? 10,000.
10,000 criminals arrested in Minnesota alone.
10,000 criminals. And these are serious.
10,000 criminals arrested in Minnesota alone. Now, I have not heard that, seen that, had it texted to me, emailed to me. I don't have any way to verify it, but I don't think Carolyn Levitt would give the president bad information with the president at the podium. That's quite a lot of arrests, Minnesota Cold. That's quite a lot of arrests. Joined by Byron York. He is the senior political reporter for the Washington Examiner. Does a daily newsletter, which you can get over at thedcexaminer.com. Also a Fox News contributor. Byron, that was quite the press conference by President Trump today, a year into his second term in office. How did you assess it?
Well, I was just chatting with Dwayne before coming on, and we decided that Trump puts to rest any questions about his health and his endurance.
You're right. I hadn't thought about that. Dwayne didn't point that out to me, but you're right.
Well, in the first few months, certainly, he still does it, but in the first few months of his term, Trump would say a lot. He says, well, you think Biden could do that? There's no way Biden could do that. He would talk for a very long time or have an extremely long day or something like that showed his endurance, which is pretty spectacular. And so I think that this was the definitive no, Biden couldn't do that performance.
Amen to that. Now to the particulars. There is one line here, I think, it also includes a off-camera shout from Carolyn Leavitt, the White House press secretary. I want to play for you. Cut number 19, when he's going through the pictures of the apprehended illegal aliens in the Minnesota Twin Cities area. Cut number 19.
All top of the line criminals. They're not going to be good. They're not going to be well behaved here. I could do thousands. We had over 3,000 in the last fairly short while. Just in Minnesota. What's the number, Carol? 10,000.
10,000 criminals arrested in Minnesota alone.
10,000 criminals. And these are serious criminals. Now, how can a place with 10,000 criminals, how can you have a state?
So,
and
Byron, that is a great clip for the campaign if you want to run on Law and Order. How can you have 10,000 criminals in the Twin Cities and be a state? What do you think? Does it work?
Yes, it does. And how can it be that all the authorities in the state are fighting so hard to protect these criminals from federal law enforcement? It's really astonishing. Now, I'm sure somebody's going to question the 10,000 number, but it's a lot of people. We've been seeing ICE press releases of who they've captured, and there are a lot of people, and there are a lot of people who are actually serious criminals. So the sheer number of it just makes you think, how could it be that the entire elected power structure of the state is fighting the enforcement of laws against these people?
The first day I went on the air, Byron, with the Hugh Hewitt show was July 10 of 2000. And I began what was for 15, maybe 17, 18 years, an annual visit to the Twin Cities on behalf of AM 1280, The Patriot, where I'm still on, because it was a great local thing. It doesn't work so well for television, so I can't do it anymore. But I used to walk around St. Paul and what they would call Little Mogadishu. There's a Somalian neighborhood there. Now, it was interesting. It was small. And I would go anywhere in the Twin Cities, like Symphony Hall, wander around downtown. It was a different, I don't have any idea what it's like now, but I don't think it's like what it was when I stopped going a decade ago.
Well, they have a significant crime rate, and I think they also have a pretty radicalized population, and especially we've seen this everywhere in the United States. College-educated liberal white women seem to have become more and more radicalized. They are certainly part of this, quote, resistance to ICE that we're seeing in Minnesota. And, basically we're also seeing in the defense of people who are in the country illegally, not only who have committed additional crimes while they're here, but also just for being in the country illegally. I think there's clearly seems to be a consensus in this group that one should be able to enter the United States illegally and stay without any objection from the government. I mean, there's just a fundamentally different worldview in power in Minnesota, and that's kind of the foundation of this conflict that we're seeing.
And it will remain that way, and it might be a blue state, red state thing, because they don't have this problem in Florida, which cooperates with ICE. Now, Byron, at the same time the president was giving his press conference, the markets closed. and the Dow is down 1.76% today. The S&P was down 2%. The NASDAQ was down 2.39%. That's a pretty big sell-off. What do you think triggered that?
Well, remember back to all the worries about tariffs when after the president first announced them. I think it was on early April of last year and Liberation Day, and all the uncertainty about tariffs and the big hits that the stock market was taking, and then the sort of relaxation that we've seen about tariffs. I saw Scott Bessent said on Fox Business the other day. He said, tariff inflation is the dog that never barked.
Huh.
And you've seen a lot of I think, decline in the anxiety level about tariffs. Now, what we saw here is the president threatening new tariffs against European Union trading partners. That was a hard-fought agreement that was made last year with the president's new tariff policy, and Trump threatens to kind of throw it out the window for our European Union trading partners, and they're vowing to fight back. So I think we just returned to 2025 style uncertainty there.
And the market's pretty frothy too. Exit question, Byron York. I wrote today for Fox News about the president's first year, but also about the vice president's first year. He did 100 appearances. He did 50 interviews, including one on this program. He's very accessible. He's not mysterious. The second lady is pregnant again. That's great news for the Vances. But everyone seems to attribute to him things that he has not said and to guess what he's thinking. Have you ever seen anything like this? Like the Vance mind-reading ability in the commentariat?
I attribute this, first of all, you're right, but I attribute this to the simple black and white objective fact that Donald Trump cannot be president again in the next term, and that Vance seems to have consolidated his position as the heir apparent, although it's not locked, it's not in stone, but he is clearly the leading candidate to replace this president who's not going to run again. And so there's a fight sort of for the direction of J.D. Vance that's going on, and it's going to keep going on.
For at least 2 more years.
There you go.
Until the nomination is locked up, if he indeed locks it up. Byron York from the Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor. Follow him on X at Byron York. There's a gun case at the Supreme Court today, an argument about Wolford versus Lopez, and Justice Brown Jackson unveiled a very novel and not impotent argument against originalism. It's not persuasive, but it is perhaps to the uninformed persuasive. So I'm going to talk about that next hour on the Hugh Hewitt Show. But I'm in the Relief Factor studio in West. I want to remind you about that, and that I took my Relief Factor in hour number 1. I did not go up the implacable hill today, having breakfast with president of Chapman University, Matt Parlow, who used to be my dean at the Chapman Law School, where I've been teaching since 1995, and always good to catch up. I'm not teaching this semester with President Parlow, and so I didn't go up the implacable hill. So I don't have anything to complain about today. It wasn't hard or easy, or it's a beautiful day out in Southern California, not like what the rest of you folks in the East are going to get hammered. I mean, big time hammered. But I have my Relief Factor anyway, and I take it every day because the point of Relief Factor, 4 natural supplements, Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. And you take them every day to help your body's anti-inflammatory system ward off the minor inflammation that comes with exercise, because you got to keep exercising to stay healthy, and you're going to get minor aches and pains as you get older. And you want to get rid of those as well. And you don't want to always reach for the over-the-counter, Tylenol, ibuprofen. Some of us can't even take Aleve or any other NSAID. That's where Relief Factor comes in, the all-natural answer to the minor aches and pains that might be troubling you right now if you're driving home from work early inside the Beltway or up in New York City or down in Florida somewhere. We are coast to coast, so it is early drive time for those of you who snuck out of the office a little bit before 5 today. Relief Factor will make that commute earlier, but you got to take it every day. The 3-week starter pack, so you can try it for 3 weeks and see if it works for you to get rid of those minor aches and pains, costs $19.95, and you can get it by calling 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or just go to their website and find the starter pack there. at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Scott Bessent, the fabulous Secretary of the Treasury, who I've got to try very hard to get on this year, was at Davos today, sat down with Maria Bartiromo and said this directly to the Europeans in front of him, cut number one.
And things are moving in a very positive way here. On the 500% tariffs on the buyers of Russian oil, that is a proposal that Senator Graham has in front of the Senate, and we will see whether that passes. We don't believe that President Trump needs that authority, that he can do it under IEPA, but that the Senate wants to give him that authority. And just to be clear, that we have Europe buying Russian oil still 4 years later. They are financing the war against themselves. India started buying Russian oil.
I want to pause there. That's a European audience of bigwigs. Europe, you are financing the Russian war you claim to be against by buying Russian oil. He's right, and they know it. Indiana is the champion of the world when it comes to college football. Well done, Hoosiers. That's 3 Big Ten titles in a row. I know the Michigan one has an asterisk next to it for cheating, but it's still 3 Big Ten titles in a row. So if you're a recruit out there and you want to play in the big game, just pick a Big Ten school. Best be a Buckeye. Now, I want to get serious. There was an argument today in front of the Supreme Court about a Hawaii statute. And the Hawaii statute is not alone. It's one of a group of states that prohibit carrying a weapon that you're licensed to carry under the Second Amendment or state law onto private property unless you have the explicit permission of the property owner to do that. So it reverses the property owner's right into a presumption that you may not carry. A lot of people do post their facilities, no weapons allowed, and you're in control of your own property. But the Hawaii statute and a few other statutes flip the presumption. It became, I think this is obviously unconstitutional as both a infringement on Second Amendment rights and to a certain extent property rights. But Justice, surprise, Brown-Jackson came to the defense of the Hawaii statute with an unusual argument, cut number 3.
Justice Jackson?
So I guess I really don't understand your response to Justice Gorsuch on the black codes. I mean, I thought the black codes were being offered here under the Bruin test to determine the constitutionality of this regulation. And it's because we have a test that asks us to look at the history and tradition. The fact that the black codes were at some later point determined themselves to be unconstitutional doesn't seem to me to be relevant to the assessment that Bruin is asking us to make. So can you say more about that?
Absolutely. Black codes were unconstitutional from the moment of their inception because they are pretextual laws that are designed to ensure that newly freed slaves are returned to a condition of sharecropping.
Okay, let me stop you there. They were not deemed unconstitutional at the time that they were enacted. They were part of the history and tradition of the country. And when we have a test now that's asking us to look at what people were doing back then, I don't understand why they should be excluded.
Because they are outliers. They are by definition unconstitutional. They have
found later,
unconstitutional.
Afterwards, not at the time. And if the test says what's happening at the time tells us what's constitutional for this purpose, why aren't they in?
Respectfully, a law is always unconstitutional. When it's from its inception,
So the history doesn't matter. We shouldn't care about the history then.
We should deeply care about the history, but the whole point of the Bruin framework is as follows. The history and tradition of the Second Amendment are particularly important because it is codifying a pre-existing right. To figure out in sort of common law fashion what the national history and tradition are, you throw out outliers. And I can think of no greater outlier than blatantly unconstitutional laws that flipped what had been the tradition in states like Louisiana. And during the period before those states were readmitted to the Union, for the purpose of trying to reduce newly freed slaves back to conditions of servitude, made it a new crime, new trespass, in order to go about armed on private property. Those are obvious outliers.
All right,
that should not count under the whole point of
Justice Alito was not having this, by the way. because it's an attack on originalism. It's not really a defense of the Hawaii statute. It's an attack on originalism because the justice is trying to argue originalism depends upon the text of the statute or the amendment or the Constitution and as it was understood at the time it was passed. And that the South ignored the Second Amendment rights of blacks is not evidence that the Second Amendment intended anything other than what it said. Justice Alito speaks up. Cut number 30.
Mr. Katyal, wasn't the purpose of the laws in the post-Reconstruction South that disarmed black people precisely to prevent them from doing what the Second Amendment is designed to protect, which is to defend yourself against attacks? They didn't want that. They wanted to disarm the black population in order to help the Klan terrorize them and law enforcement officers in that period, in that region. They wanted to put them at the mercy of racist law enforcement officers. So is it not the height of irony to cite a law that was enacted for exactly the purpose of preventing someone from exercising the Second Amendment right, to cite this as an example of what the Second Amendment protects?
It is a height of irony. I think Justice Alito there is making sure that the public doesn't get fed the Brown-Jackson attack on originalism without a contrary argument. I think Justice Gorsuch kicked off this line of argument. Cut number 33.
There's been some discussion about the black codes, and maybe they should be relevant, and maybe we really should consider them as significant here. In fact, they're a dead ringer. Thoughts?
It is 2026, and it is somewhat astonishing that black codes, which are unconstitutional, are being offered as evidence of what our tradition of constitutionally permissible firearm regulation looks like. Those laws are dead ringers only in the sense that this law, too, is an unconstitutional pretext. The black codes were offered, as you mentioned, by states before their readmission to the Union. It is not an indictment of the Bruin framework to say that unconstitutional laws do not count in illuminating a valid tradition. As Bruin and Rahimi themselves say, you're looking for laws that aren't outliers. They illustrate what the national tradition entails. And so it is no indictment, but frankly, an endorsement of our history and tradition that when you look at the founding era laws, they are very different from the black codes, and that these black codes themselves are complete departures from what the laws in Louisiana and other states were like before, which was to allow people to presumptively go about in public on property open to the public without consent.
That was what we call batting practice in constitutional terms. Justice Gorsuch served up a big fat pitch over the plate, and she hit it. Justice Amy Coney Barrett added this, cut 32.
Well, Mr. Katyal, I don't understand why you're resisting the First Amendment. Well, I do understand why you're resisting it. But let's say there's no content discrimination. It's just a ban on leafleting, and it's a ban because people don't like solicitation. So they just don't want people passing out pamphlets. It's not aimed at Jehovah's Witnesses or anything like that, like some of our old cases. Why would that fail rational basis review?
So I think it might because, as this court said in Free Speech versus Paxson, you still have to have some underlying rationality.
Yeah, people find it annoying. They don't like it. They think it affects their businesses, and people don't want to go to businesses if they're going to be accosted by pamphleteers.
But it may be a rational basis problem, but I don't think it's a First Amendment problem. This court in Rowan said that, quote, the right to engage in expressive activity generally stops at the outer boundary of every person's domain.
And that's the point.
Let me one more question. So let me take it out of the First Amendment for you. I mean, let's pretend that public accommodation laws don't exist. Because the 14th Amendment doesn't apply to private action, only state action. Let's say that a state, in the absence of public accommodation laws, decides to flip the default and say, unless the owner affirmatively consents, black people cannot enter your home.
Yeah, so I think that's one which would be unconstitutional every day of the week because it would violate the Equal Protection Clause, because the government on its face is making a racial classification. So,
because there's state action in the way the government is adjusting its property defaults.
Absolutely.
Even if there's a long history and tradition, say, in Louisiana, of this kind of discrimination at the doorstep.
Right. It would still violate the Equal Protection.
Why isn't there state action here when the state is flipping the default? It's not just a matter of property law.
Right. Our point is not that whether there's state action or not. It's that there's no underlying right. It's that my friend assumes is conceded this. He said there is no right to come onto private property absent consent. And so the only question is whether the state can fill in the conditions.
Yeah, there's no right to come onto private property without consent. So my public accommodations example is right. I mean, absent a public accommodations law or in a private residence, you could turn someone away on the basis of race.
But there is no anti-discrimination component in the Second Amendment the way there is.
Oh, he retreats. Neil Katyal retreats there. And then Justice Alito for the win, cut number 31.
If someone owns a store, or let's say it's a little restaurant, and this person has very strong political opinions and does not want anybody in that restaurant who is wearing attire that is expressing approval of a particular political candidate, that person, the owner of that restaurant, has the right to say, you can't come in, right?
Yes.
All right. Now, could Hawaii enact a statute that says that if you are wearing the attire expressing approval of a particular political candidate, you can't come in unless you get express consent from the owner of the restaurant?
Again, that's a viewpoint discrimination and prohibited.
It's a violation of the First Amendment. We have a violation of the First Amendment and a violation of the right that the court held is protected by the Second Amendment in Bruin, which is the right of law-abiding citizens to carry a firearm for purposes outside of the home for purposes of self-defense.
I would say that the Hawaii statute is dead, 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 dead. This parrot is dead. And it doesn't matter what Justice Brown Jackson tries to cobble together as an overarching attack because there's an anti-canon. Right? We have canonical decisions like Brown v. Board of Education. There's an anti-canon. Dred Scott, Plessy v. Ferguson, and Korematsu. And underneath that anti-canon are all the black codes. We don't cite them for any reason whatsoever because they're horrific examples of America getting rid of its race problem not fast enough. And it actually surprises me that anyone would go there to argue that the black codes are part of the history and tradition of the United States when they have been repudiated by the Supreme Court as contra the 14th Amendment, the First Amendment, and the original Constitution. I want to go back for the benefit of those who just got in their car on the East Coast who may not have been able to watch President Trump's 2-hour press conference today, marking the 1-year anniversary of taking the oath of office, almost to the minute he started. And he began by talking about Minnesota. So let's go there, cut number 14.
Oh, that's a big crowd. It's a lot of people. I think it's like a record. So these are accomplishments. We have a lot of accomplishments. And as you know, this is the anniversary, first anniversary, January 20th. And it's been an amazing period of time. We have a book that I'm not going to read to you, but these are the accomplishments of what we've produced. All page after page after page, individual things. I could stand here and read it for a week and we wouldn't be finished. But we've done more than any other administration has done by far in terms of military, in terms of ending wars, in terms of completing wars. Nobody's really seen very much like it. I think it's appropriate that because Minnesota is so much in the fray, and I say to my people all the time, and they're so busy doing other things, they don't say it like they should. They're apprehending murderers and drug dealers and a lot of bad people. And these are just some of the more recent ones that we have. And I can show you some of the people, vicious, many of them murderers. These are all out of Minnesota, just Minnesota. I say, why don't you talk about that more? Because people don't know. Do you want to live with these people? International murder. These are people that are they're apprehended and either put in jails in their country from where they came, and the countries respect us, and so they actually put them there. In the old days, they didn't respect our country. Biden wouldn't do this because he let them all in. You know, if you didn't have open border policies of Biden, none of this, all of the time that we spend talking about Minnesota and everything else, most of them are coming from out of the country.
Then he continued on Minnesota, cut number 15.
Boy, these are rough characters. These are all criminal, illegal aliens that, in many cases, they're murderers, they're drug lords, drug dealers. They're the mentally insane. There's some of them who are brutal killers. They're mentally insane. They're killers, but they're insane. These are just in Minnesota. California, it's worse. In other states, it's worse. No, Minnesota, the crime is incredible. The financial crimes are incredible. And the problem is because of the agitators and insurrectionists, whatever you want, troublemakers, but they're paid agitators and insurrectionists. Nobody talks about the fact that $19 billion at a minimum is missing in Minnesota, given to a large degree by Somalians. They've taken it. Somalians, can you imagine? And they don't do it. A lot of very low IQ people, they don't do it. Other people work it out, and they get them money, and they go out and buy Mercedes-Benzes, and they come from here, they have no money. They never had money. They never had a life. They never had a government. They never had a country, because there's basically no country. Somalia is not even a country. They don't have anything that resembles a country. And if it is a country, it's considered just about the worst in the world. They come here and they become rich, and they don't have a job. I was told that Ilhan Omar is worth $30 million. She never had a job. She's a crooked congressman. So here is another one. And I have, oh, by the way, we just took out, these are all what ICE is doing. And it's a dangerous job. These are rough people. Weapons. This one here is very bad. I'm going through this because I think we have plenty of time. I'm going to beautiful place in Switzerland where we'll be, I'm sure I'm very happily awaited for.
Cut number 17, he stayed on Minnesota.
These are tough people. So this is what the people are trying to protect, because all ICE wants to do is get them out of our country, bring them to prisons and jails and mental institutions from where they came. That's all they want to do. They're patriots, and they have to be abused by guys like Don Lemon, who's a loser, lightweight. I saw him the way he walked in that church. It was terrible. I have such respect for that pastor. He was so calm. He was so nice. He was just accosted. What they did in that church was horrible yesterday. Look at it here. 24 convictions. 24 times convicted. They're not charges. These are convictions. So he comes from outside the country. Do you think he's going to be good here? He's convicted 24 times. He's going to be good here, right? It doesn't work that way.
He addresses the Renee Good shooting, cut number 18.
They want to take him out of our country. And we're met with paid agitators and insurrectionists, troublemakers. They're paid. You know, when the woman was shot, and I felt terribly about that. And I understand both sides of it. But when she was shot, there was another woman that was screaming shame, 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 right? You saw it. So loud. She was like a professional opera singer. She was so loud and so professional. She wasn't a woman that was hurt, like, oh, my heart's injured. She was a professional. She's shame, shame. She's screaming shame, shame. I said, that's not a normal person. That's a professional. These are professional agitators and professional people that want to see our country do badly. But that's not happening because we have the hottest country anywhere in the world, despite this stuff.
And one more, cut 19 on Minnesota.
All top of the line criminals. They're not going to be good. They're not going to be well behaved here. I could do thousands. We had over 3,000 in the last fairly short while, just in Minnesota. What's the number, Carol?
10,000.
10,000.
10,000 criminals arrested in Minnesota alone.
10,000 criminals. And these are serious criminals. Now, how can a place with 10,000 criminals, how can you have a state?
It's going to be a rough day for Josh Holmes on the Ruthless podcast tomorrow. Josh is from Minnesota, and it's going to be a rough day on Lilacs coming up later in the hour. Can we mark that one down? I want to play James cut number 19. But Holmes has got. They don't take any prisoners on the Ruthless podcast. Duncan, Ashbrook, Smug, they're going to be playing clips, and Josh is going to be in a fetal position for the incoming for his beloved Minnesota. And I love Minnesota, but 10,000 criminals arrested and removed by ICE? 10,000? It's really not that big of a place. It doesn't have that much of a population. 10,000? Okay, that's going to get fact-checked, I'm sure, and we'll find out. But Carolyn Levitt always has her ducks lined up. So if Carolyn Levitt shouts from the Ashbrook chair, because John Ashbrook was the first person to sit in the honorary Ashbrook chair for new media, if that happens, I got to believe Carolyn Levitt knows what she's talking about. So we'll find out. We'll follow it. I don't want you to think Minnesota is the only state with immigration-related issues. In fact, Town Hall has run an exclusive story up right now with evidence emerging that suggests migrants from the West African nation of Mauritania have been exploiting the U.S. immigration system and asylum system in Laughlin, Ohio, raising serious questions about the integrity of the process. The footage that townhall.com has includes allegations that some migrants are being coached on how to navigate the asylum system, encouraged to fabricate claims to meet legal thresholds, and informed, according to sources on the ground, that favorable rulings can be secured through illicit means. These claims point to systemic vulnerabilities that make the immigration system susceptible to abuse and corruption. At the center of the operation is Patricia Golder, who, according to the footage, has turned the alleged manipulation of the asylum process into her business. Golder says she takes a portion of the pay given to the Mauritanian migrants, in exchange for helping them navigate the system, and she claims she can bribe judges to rule in migrants' favor. The footage also suggests that many of the migrants involved neither embrace nor intend to adopt core American values. It's a 26-minute video. It's available at townhall.com. I'll tell you about a story that's breaking at our sister website. I haven't watched it. I don't know it, but I believe that they've got the footage, and it's available at townhall.com. Now I want to go back to President Trump's presser today. Cut number 24 on spiking the ball a bit on his foreign policy.
The country is proud for the attack on Venezuela, the attack on the Iran nuclear capability, wiped it out. I mean, first administration, Soleimani, the father of the roadside bomb, al-Baghdadi, the father of ISIS, who was rebuilding ISIS. We wiped them out.
And then he went on to talk about Greenland and the threat to Greenland if tariffs don't do the threat if they don't get a negotiated settlement on tariffs on Greenland in the form of tariffs. Cut number 25.
What happens to the tariff threat to Greenland if the Supreme Court comes out and rules against you on the tariffs? And
well, I'll have to use something else. I mean,
are
look,
you willing to use force?
You know, take a look at the word license. Take a look at other things. I mean, we have other alternatives. But what we're doing now is the best, the strongest, the fastest, the easiest, the least complicated.
And then he went on Greenland as well. Cut 26.
If a consequence of your determination to take control of Greenland is the ultimate breakup of the NATO alliance, is that a price you're willing to pay?
You mean the breakup of it's very interesting.
The NATO alliance.
So I think something's going to happen that's going to be very good for everybody. Nobody's done more for NATO than I have, as I said before, in every way. Getting them to go up to 5% of GDP was something that nobody thought was possible, and pay. At 2%, they weren't paying. At 5%, they are paying. And they're buying a lot of things from us, and they're giving them, I guess, to Ukraine. That's up to them, but they're giving them to whoever they're giving them to, but they're buying a lot. I think that we will work something out where NATO is going to be very happy and where we're going to be very happy. But we need it for security purposes. We need it for national security and even world security. It's very important. How about
world security, national security, Greenland? I am in the Relief Factor Studio West. I've got my Relief Factor here. I remind you, I took it now at number one on air. If you're watching the Salem News Channel, you see me do it. If you're listening on the Salem Radio Network, one of our great affiliates that aren't in the Salem Network, you can hear it. Not hard. I always open up the package, always drink it with a little bit of, I don't have Trader Joe's water here on the West Coast. I've got Arrowhead. But I did go up the Implacable Hill this morning as I was having breakfast with President Matt Parlow of Chapman University. So always like to go out to breakfast with people because that spares me the obligation to go up the Implacable Hill. But I go up the Implacable Hill and I do long distances on the weekend because it keeps you healthy and it doesn't hurt because of Relief Factor. Relief Factor gets rid of minor aches and pains by helping your body's anti-inflammatory system stay strong, adapt to regular exercise, adapt to stresses, and compensate when you do something not so smart. My friend Ben's a young man and a strong man, but he's walking around not feeling so good because he pulled out his back. Lots of people do it. Lots of people have pulled out their back. I've done it as well, and then you just got to get a lot of Relief Factor and take 3 packets a day for a while. The starter pack, $19.95, which you can get at 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. You take 3 a day for the first week, 2 a day for the second week, and then you're on the 1-a-day program. But when you do something stupid like throw out your back, then you go to 3 a day right away. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, or go get that starter pack, $19.95 at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com.
all top of the line criminals? They're not going to be good. They're not going to be well behaved here. I could do thousands. We had over 3,000 in the last fairly short while. Just in Minnesota. What's the number, Carol? 10,000.
10,000 criminals arrested in Minnesota alone.
10,000 criminals. And these are serious.
So we are fortuitous in the selection of guests today. Josh Holmes from Minnesota in hour 1. James Lilacs, humorous extraordinaire, joins us now. JamesLilacs.substack.com. I've posted his Substack address. James, when the president got done with Minnesota after 20 minutes, I think the Chamber of Commerce basically quit. You're not going to get anyone to go to Minnesota. 10,000 criminals arrested.
Oh, no, that's
in the last 2 days.
10,000. That's one for each one of the lakes that we have, yes. But that's great, isn't it? I mean, it says somehow that actually the state is incrementally less safe. Now, the people will dispute and say, a lot of those 10,000 people they're talking about aren't criminals in the crime sense. They're criminals in the sense that they were here illegally. But there was circulated by Homeland Security the other week a list of 30 people, bad hombres, bad guys who've done awful stuff to women and children that they'd apprehended and gotten out. It's odd that there is this defense of the whole notion that these people should be sort of left in place, or I don't know what exactly the protesters want to do with them, because they know that some of the people on whose behalf they are protesting are really, really awful people who oughtn't to be here. And the crimes that people have suffered while these people have been here would not have happened if these people had not been deported long ago. I was reading a Substack by a former colleague, good guy, who was talking about how strange it is to live around here with all of this going on, and yet your daily life is rather ordinary, which is true for just about everybody around here. He'd gone to the Mall of America with his kids and were having a great time, and still in the back of his head was thinking about what the city had become. And then his wife told him there's been another shooting, and they contemplated whether or not they should leave the mall. Now, like I say, I like this guy. I got no brief against him. He's a good fellow. But this was a shooting that happened after a couple of trained Aragua guys, the Venezuelan wonderful fellows, had attacked an ICE officer, and the ICE officer had shot him. This is what had made them nervous. It's getting worse. It's compacting. It's accelerating. There's been another shooting. When the fact of the matter is, if the gang member that got shot had shot another gang member, or had winged a child in the process of having some dispute over territory for child sex trafficking, nobody in Egan, in a far-flung suburb, would have considered leaving the Mall of America because of it. If it happens off stage, off camera to the rest of these people, that's kind of the sunk cost of living in a city. But when you actually go out and do something about getting rid of these people, there's the whistles blown, there's the flags, there's the guys with the rifles, there's all of this stuff, and I'm not sure exactly how it ends here.
James, you've lived how long in Minneapolis?
Since 1976 with a 3.5-year tour of duty in Washington, D.C.
Holy smokes. That's 50 years with a 3.5 sentence time off for good behavior inside the Beltway. In those 50 years, do you think it's a different place now than when you first moved there in terms of fear factor?
Yeah. In terms of fear factor, well, yes and no. I mean, when I moved here, the city was in the 70s slump. In the 80s, it boomed. It was wonderful. It was great. Downtown was vibrant and robust, as they like to say. The buildings were packed. The stores were packed. It was a great place. And the decline began in the 90s when we had a gang influx and we had the reputation of being Murderapolis, which was mostly because the gangs were shooting at each other and killing cops and the rest of it. And then they got their hands around that via a variety of ways, and it seemed to get it got better. The 90s receded in the mirror. The unsafe feeling that we had in the 90s was gone in the 20s and the 10s. But after 2020, the distinction has been pronounced. Now, it's better now than it was in 2020. There was a time after George Floyd that the police just simply backed off, did nothing, stopped nobody, cars going through red lights, murder all over the place. Everybody knew it. But the city on itself, every neighborhood did not feel saturated with fear. But the reputation
now, James,
of the place,
I explained earlier, I went there at least annually in the aughts and the teens. Almost the first 2 decades of the Hugh Hewitt show. Got started on July 10, 2000. Had a lovely time. Walked around St. Paul at night. Went to the St. Paul Opera across the green from the St. Paul Hotel. Downtown Minneapolis, you know where the Symphony Hall is. And I walked around there with the Northern Alliance bloggers. We go, it's the safest place in America. Has that changed? Has that vibe gone?
Yeah, the vibe is. It definitely is. Part of it is that when you have less foot traffic in downtown, you're just going to have the miscreants are going to be a little bit more obvious. There's a really vital entertainment district there. They get some spiky people who like to settle their disputes ballistically. But it is not a dystopia. It is not a place where there's gunfire in every street corner downtown and it's just hollowed out and there are fentanyl zombies staggering about. It's not San Francisco, but it's demonstrably worse. And one of the reasons that it feels so tragic and so keenly felt is that it was so good. It was a great, good place. And all of that's happened has been happening not by design, but just simply by the indifference of the people who know what needs to be done but refuse to do anything about it.
Well, that brings us to Jacob Fry. How do you like your mayor sounding like John Calhoun in the nullification debates of the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s?
I know, it's extraordinary. And I have to remind you that he was the moderate choice. He was the guy that everybody that a lot of people held their nose and voted for because the alternative would have been 10 times worse. So yes, when he gets up and talks about having the police fight ICE, and you see the police chief standing there like the Rock of Gibraltar with only his eyes going up Spock-like to indicate the curiosity of that sentiment. I don't think it's going to come to that. For one thing, they've lost a huge number of police who simply took advantage of the Family Leave Act that's just been signed here, a new wonderful invitation to fraud. And they said, I'm out of here for X number of months. This isn't worth it. So yes, once again, we're probably understaffed in terms of police just when we need them most.
James, 30-second. What has happened to the schools? You used to go and narrate the school concert, right, at Symphony Hall. You narrated it for the kids. Do they still do that?
Minnesota. They do Minnesota Youth Symphonies. I used to do that for 25 years, right? And that's the cream of the crop of all of the schools around here putting their finest students. Some of the schools are still great. The place to which I sent my daughter, a public school up the street for many years, is still fantastic. But at this point, when it comes to fixing the schools, that's like third or fourth down the list right now in the Minneapolis imagination. If we solve everything else, we'll get to that and say, oh, right, we got that school problem too. Oh, and the joy to be an urban center in the 21st century.
Lilacs is our Twin Cities correspondent without whom we would be lost. Go and read him at jameslilacs.substack.com. I posted the link over at X. Thank you, James. From Dystopia, that was Lilacs. I want to end the program today with a little high-flown rhetoric from Speaker Mike Johnson in front of the UK Parliament today. Cut number 9.
Today, we see faith in our foundations and our shared inheritance weakening. And what we have to do is channel the wisdom of our predecessors to chart our own renewal. So what does renewal require? Just a few things. Well, first, it requires remembrance. This is a biblical admonition, in fact. We're to remember our blessings and from where we came. And the great British philosopher G.K. Chesterton warned, every high civilization decays by forgetting obvious things. Things like the dignity of the individual, the stabilizing role of the family, the human yearning for meaning and purpose, and the indispensable relationship between freedom and virtue. In short, we have to remember our foundations, and we have to describe what they are, because the generation behind us seems not to understand this. As Chesterton observed, America was founded on a creed that was set forth, he said, with dogmatic and theological lucidity in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That profound acknowledgement of obvious and undeniable truth shook the foundations of Western democracy, and with it, the course of human history. Our founders recognized that all of us are made in the image of God. And because of that, every single person has inestimable dignity and value. And our value is not related in any way to the color of our skin or what town or village we hail from, what our talents are, etc. Our value is inherent because it is given to us by our Creator. We built an entire nation upon that premise. And just as our citizens are endowed with God-given and unalienable rights, all nations and all people should adhere to the obvious laws of nature and of nature's God, as our documents say. In his farewell address, the father of our country, George Washington, gave all of his advice that echoes down through his countrymen, even today, and echoes down through the generations in reminding us how we would keep this republic, how we would keep this grand experiment in self-government. And he said famously, of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. And John Adams was our second president, and he said famously, our Constitution is made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other.
I think the irony of the Speaker of the House talking to the British Parliament, from which we declared our independence in 1776, is so enormous, I can't even communicate to you. I wonder what they were thinking. Because, of course, that document was written by Thomas Jefferson and other members of the committee and adopted by the Continental Congress, Second Continental Congress, to break away from the United Kingdom and to declare to the world the reasons that we did it. And that's a magnificent gesture and generous act by the Parliament of the United Kingdom, who must have known the Declaration of Independence from Great Britain and the United Kingdom was going to come up.